Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very first STEM Talks of 2024. We are very excited to have you all here for this event and to be able to highlight some of the cool careers within cancer. So today's session, we're going to speak to 4 different individuals, and they're going to talk about all they do in their day-to-day life and how this relates to cancer. So we're going to have them all talk first, and then we're going to have an open Q&A period at the end where you can ask them any questions that you have. And we're also going to ask some of the questions that you pre-submitted beforehand. So before we get started, Trisha's going to launch just like a little bit of a welcome poll. We just want to know if you are indeed interested in cancer, how many of you have come to our events before, just so we generally know who's in the audience today. And then other things for you to note, as you can see, the event is being recorded. So please keep your cameras and microphones off so there's no background noise for the recording. And then additionally, if you are here for our team certificate program, just make sure your first and last name is spelled properly, and that will count as attendance for our program. So for those of you that are brand new, though, to UHN STEM Pathways and what our program is, it's going to give you a little bit of context before we start the event. So our team runs both virtual and in-person programming throughout the school year. And if you attend 7 of our events throughout the school year, we actually give you a certificate of participation that's signed by senior UHN leadership. And then also, if you are in like the health and wellness program, you can also get a certificate towards that. So whether that be medical terminology or lab practices. So consider joining this program if you haven't already. Trisha's going to put this all in the chat as links, and we have a lot of more cool events coming up. So for instance, next month, our STEM Talks is on psychology. So with that in mind, we're just going to start the event. I think 4M, you're up first, so feel free to take over screen share from me and tell everybody about the cool work that you are doing.
That's good. I'm just gonna do the routine. Can everyone see my screen and hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, my name is Forum. I'm a 4th-year PhD candidate in the Department of Medical Biophysics here at the University of Toronto. I'm also a research trainee in the Princess Margaret Hospital, but also affiliated with the Research Tower. So let's get started. I am originally from Mississauga, Brampton, but I did move to Toronto about a year and a half ago, in the middle of my PhD. I have 2 supervisors, so I'm in this unique position of being co-supervised. From both of my labs, I've been in the COCA lab for 5 years and the Hopkins lab for 3. In my spare time, I really enjoy embroidery. I really like solving mystery novels, and any kind of movie or show with them as well. And I also love hanging out with my dog. So here are a couple of my lab mates. We get into a few shenanigans in the lab near like 6 p.m. This is my dog. He's very beautiful. And then this is a little bit about what what my activity in the wet lab looks like on a regular day. So I did my undergrad here at the University of Toronto in immunology and cell molecular biology. I actually started off in the chemistry program where I wanted to pursue chemistry and maybe do research in chemistry. But then I really learned that I enjoyed the biological concepts and then how people would go about learning how to solve biological questions. And so in my second year, I decided to switch into the immunology and cell molecular biology stream. And I also got involved in research at the end of my second year. I was at Princess Margaret again. And I ended up doing 2 honors thesis projects throughout my undergrad in topics of interest. And then I realized I really do like research, and at least for the foreseeable future, I would like to see what else there is out there in research for me. And so I ended up joining the Department of Medical Biophysics as a PhD student, where I am now. And this is just a picture of the building that I work in on College Street. So what my work really focuses on is pancreatic cancer and cancer therapeutics. The pancreatic cancer, as you might already know, is very aggressive, and there aren't many treatment options available for patients. And so sometimes there's drugs that work for some patients, but might not work for other patients, and it can be very dependent on the mutations that are present in their DNA, or the types of proteins, the number or abundance of certain proteins, etc. And so I work in this sphere of understanding what kind of proteins are present in which patients and whether or not they would benefit from a specific therapeutic modality. And so what does that look like is I look at something called protein-protein interactions, and that's essentially, you know what a protein is. It's a complex molecule that has many different functions within the cell and tells it what to do. And it does so by interacting with other proteins and sending messages. And so why does the number of partners matter? So if you look that the average interaction partner per protein is around 2.3, there are these proteins that are kind of central to very large networks that have more than the average number of interaction partners. And so they might be very important. And so to really investigate them, I take pancreatic cancer patient samples and then publicly available data sets. And I've generated a computer algorithm that helps me find central proteins that might be involved in different pathways that lead to cancer progression, such as cell growth. And then I want to interfere with those proteins to see whether or not what I see, these pathways like cell growth, can I actually interfere with that? So for example, if I interfere with the protein involved in cell growth, can I reduce a tumor size? And so as a student, I have a lot more flexibility in what my week looks like. And so this is just a quick glance at what my week might look like. Our weeks are constantly changing. No week is the same as the other, neither is and every day is different too. And so really in terms of experiments, I might have them all days of the week, a couple of days, doesn't really matter. It depends on what the duration of each experiment is and how the process just ends up working out. I am also still a student, so I do have some classes I have to take. I have to take meetings with my supervisors. I have to participate in student seminars, and which essentially is a presentation in front of the department. I'm part of a lot of extracurriculars, so I'm part of student committees. I enjoy mentoring high school students, and then I also don't know what I want to do after my PhD, so I participate in different industry workshops to understand what kind of career options there are for me out there. And then I believe very strongly in maintaining a good work-life balance because that keeps you motivated, that keeps you driven. And so I do try to make time for my social life. So I hang out with my dog, I see my family, I see my friends, I sleep a lot. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about what my week looks like. And so, why did I choose this career? Cancer biology is very complex, and there aren't enough effective treatment options for patients. And so, even if I was able to contribute a very small part to such a large goal, that makes me that's one of the things that really motivates me. And also, I love problem solving and being creative. And so, research really makes you think outside of the box and apply novel solutions to these very complex problems. And that, I believe, is the end of me.
All right, thank you, Forum. Clarice, you are up next. I will share your slides.
Thank you so much. I'm Clarice, and hi, everyone. I'm really excited to join you guys and talk to you a little bit about what I do at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center. So I'm a registered nurse, and I work on the tumor immunotherapy program in the Cancer Clinical Research Unit. So if we could go to next slide. Thank you so much. So my background, just a little bit about me. My family were newcomers to Canada. We came here from China when I was about 7 years old, so I was in grade 2. And we've been living in Toronto in the GTA ever since. And I love traveling, writing stories, drawing, and playing video games. I'm kind of a history nerd, so I hang out with knights. Please don't make fun of me. And I absolutely love cats. I'm very allergic to my 2 cats, but when you love cats enough, you just make it work. Okay, so my education, I had a little bit of a untraditional education coming into this field. So when I was in high school, elementary school, I never considered myself a STEM kid. I was always an arts kid, a creative kid. So I went into studies in history. I pursued a bachelor's of arts in history at the University of Toronto. And at the same time, I also joined the Canadian Armed Forces when I was 16. So I was in the military for 8 years, working in supply and logistics, and I absolutely loved it. Actually, if you look at the picture to the left side, I'm the person on the far right, the only person smiling in that picture. But sometime during my third year of my history degree, I realized that I actually wanted to become a nurse. So I had to make the transition from being a Bachelor's of Arts student into a Bachelor's of Science student. So I took all the I took all the science requirements and I applied to U of T nursing school, and I was lucky enough to be offered a position there. So I transitioned after my history degree into my nursing degree. And what I want to emphasize with this talk with you who are listening is that it's really never too late to change your mind. It's never too late to decide that you want to do something else with your career. And even if it's difficult, if you really, really want it badly enough, you work really hard, you really won't regret it. So just want to make sure that everyone can take that from my experience. Speaking of not being sure what you want to do, when I became a nurse, I worked through a lot of different areas. I started off in acute care, moved into the ICU during the COVID pandemic. I also worked in the cath lab where we put stents for patients with heart attacks. And during all these career moves, I worked with a lot of oncology patients, so cancer patients. And those are the patients and their families that really left a long lasting impact on me. And eventually I found my way into cancer clinical trials at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. And these are the lovely people I now work with on my team. And I'm just so grateful to be part of this team and to tell you more about what we do there. Okay, so what is cancer clinical trials? This is something that I didn't know a lot about when I went through my nursing education, but this is the way in which that new ideas for cancer treatments are studied and tested using real patients. So we take some of the studies that other scientists have done. So for example, what Forum and her team are doing, we take that research with the proteins and we try to apply that into a treatment that we can give to patients. We experiment with that and we ask those questions. Is this treatment actually safe for use in human beings? Is it actually effective for people with cancer specifically? And whether or not this treatment is more effective than the mainstream treatment that we currently give patients with cancer. And are these benefits more than the risks and potential side effects? So let's talk a little bit about what is different between the mainstream treatments and what we're studying. The traditional cancer therapies that we're giving right now to our patients, a lot of it is circling around radiation or drug therapy. So these treatments, they not only target the cancerous cells in a patient's body that are causing their disease, but they also kill a lot of healthy cells. And that's why you have a lot of side effects like the hair falling out, people feeling very nauseous, very sick. On the other hand, immunotherapy, which is what my team is focused on, it's trying to find out a way to harness and unleash the body's natural immune system. So this is the immune system that helps protect us against colds, against infections. Well, we're trying to find a way to use that immune system to target cancer and to selectively target the cancer cells that are harming somebody and hoping to have less side effects than traditional cancer therapies. And one way that we do this in our studies is by studying something called tumor infiltrating lymphocytes. So let's break this down a little bit. The tumor is the cancer tissue, and the lymphocytes are a form of white blood cells that can target other things within our body and try to kill those cells that are harming us. So what we found is that there's some immune cells on the patient's tumor that actually can already recognize it and are trying to attack it. But the problem is there's just not enough of them. So in some of the studies that we're working on, some of which also include pancreatic patients as well, we surgically remove a part of the tumor. We isolate the lymphocytes that we have found responsible that are actually able to recognize that tumor. And we take them to a lab and we grow them until there's a ton of them. And then we reinfuse that treatment actually back to the patient. Now, I still can't wrap my mind around this. I think this is just really, really cool because this is a case where we're actually making a personalized medicine to treat a patient's tumor using their own tumor. So I just think that's really cool. And a lot of patients actually do really, really well on studies involving this method. Next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So a week in the life for me is kind of very dependent on what's going on, but the primary focus for me is to monitor and we follow up on patients during treatment. So some of our patients who are receiving this treatment are admitted in the hospital. So the study team, which is myself, the doctors who are working on the treatment, and other members of the research team, we monitor the patients either in person in clinics, or we call them at home to make sure that they're doing all right. We talk to them, talk to their families, and we work with the team to order, schedule all their tests. We also have to attend study meetings. So to the right, you'll see some pictures that I took during one weekend where one of the studies that I was working on, they flew me and the study team out to Philadelphia to talk about the study and actually tour the lab where they're making the cells. And I could only get a picture of the lab from the outside. I wasn't allowed to take pictures on the inside, but it was really, really cool. It was like a sci-fi movie. So it was just fantastic, really exciting. One of the main focuses of what I try to do is I try to help patients connect between their lives in the world of cancer research as individuals and not as subjects. So that's really where trials nursing comes in, because for a lot of the patients on our trials, their cancer is very aggressive, and the clinical trials actually their last hope to spend more time with their family and their loved ones. So just to summarize why I chose cancer research, it's just an incredibly exciting field. We get to work with a huge team to develop new treatments for the future, get to support cancer patients through their journey. The job is unpredictable and it's never boring. So like I mentioned before, we have patients who do really well on our trials and their cancer actually goes away. But for some patients, they actually don't do so well. And some patients have actually unfortunately passed away on our trials. So it's a career that really requires a lot of critical thinking, teamwork, and a lot of compassion. And it's been such a privilege to work with these patients and to work with the team and to talk to you a little bit about what I do. I wish that when I was younger, when I was deciding to go into STEM, that I knew that this opportunity existed.
Thank you, Clarice. That was so cool. All right, Natalie, you are up next. Feel free to screen share your slides.
Great to see everybody today and to be here, and I'm glad to talk about my experience at UHN. So I am a senior manager at UHN Digital, which is our term basically for information technology department. Bit of background of me. I've lived in Toronto my whole life. I have 2 children, and I love to spend time traveling and do all kinds of outdoor activities, enjoy my life outside of work. So I did an undergraduate degree at the University of Guelph. My Bachelor of Science was in biomedical toxicology. And then I did a Master's of Science at University of Toronto in laboratory medicine and pathobiology. My main focus after my work, although partly my master's degree was also related to cancer oncology, but not in the same way. But after I finished that program, then I proceeded to work in genomics, which is related to personalized medicine, which you've already heard a little bit about today. So it can be used in research to analyze genomics, a group of the population to look for possible causes, indicators, or outcomes, new treatment targets. Or it can also be used in clinical care to look at information about a specific patient's unique genetic profile. So I'll just take you on a little bit of a history tour, which is, as my career here has been quite long. And I'll go back a little bit. When I first started to work here, we were developing a new technology that's called a microarray. It started out at the Princess Margaret Genomics Center. That's not where the technology was developed, but what we did was take this technology that was being widely applied across science and many other parts of the world, and we brought it to the Toronto researchers at a lower cost and more availability. It's pretty, at the time, it was very high-tech technology and a challenge to use and required specialized equipment to make them, but also to read the results from them after. So I'll just try to tell you a little bit about what a microarray could do. In laboratory research, when you're trying to figure out what is different between, say, a tumor sample and a normal patient sample, you might look at the proteins that was discussed already, and you can also look at the RNA or the DNA, which are the precursors to those proteins, and see what differences there are between, again, the normal tissue and a cancer sample, either from a person without cancer or within one person. You can take two samples and compare them. So microarrays was a high throughput way to assess many, many genes at a time and look at the expression of those genes that then would turn into proteins and actually do the functions of the cell. And again, some of those, if they're malfunctioning, will contribute to cancer or the reason why the cancer is able to continue to grow and not be kept in check by your body's natural systems. So we did a lot of work on this technology at the time, but it's not very applicable into the clinical care. It's not so easy to use. And over time, a competing technology became more available and took over, and that's called high throughput sequencing. So it's a way that we can actually read the genetic sequence from a specific sample, rather than the older technology was sort of more comparative. You needed to use a lot of replicates and it had a lot of caveats to it. Whereas the new technology that's still in use today and has now been translated into clinical care is much easier to use and more specific to each person, where you can really look at those details of the person in each individual situation. And so we brought that technology into UHN as the first, as initial setup way back many years ago now. And what we had to do was set up a high performance computing service in order to be able to process the data. So I don't know if people on the call are aware of how many genes a human has, but I'll just give you an example. The fruit fly has about 13,000 genes. So you might think, oh, well, a human must have many, many more. When in fact, we have only about 20,000 genes. But even at 20,000 genes, that is 3 billion base pairs that you have to read and compare when you're doing a sequencing experiment to look at the genes of a person and see what's changed, when you're really kind of looking at everything, because you don't know which area has the difference. So that ends up to be a lot of data that needs to get processed in order to find those differences. Our high performance computing system that we set up now has 4,000 CPU, 25 terabytes of RAM, 22 GPU cores that are functioning. A total of 3.6 petabytes of storage is available in the system. And we process this sequencing data for all of the facilities at UHN that do that work. That includes the research facilities. Some of those are doing clinical research, as was spoken about just earlier, where they're taking samples from the patients that are on those studies and looking at differences to see who's responding, why was one responding and not another, this sort of thing. And we also process all of the data and store it for clinical care, where this technology is also used to look at prognosis, what therapy should be provided to certain cancer patients. So my experience has been from all the way from the lab in this area, creating those microarrays, to working on the sequencing and developing the technologies that we started in research and then applied to clinical care. And we now use those same methods that we learned to use for research work. We applied them to clinical work. And it's given me quite a wide view of the organization. And in terms of clinical research, I now have transitioned to help out with digital solutions for other areas besides specifically the sequencing. So a week in my life is a lot about meeting with people, researchers, other research support staff, people who work on clinical trials, and helping them to assess what their digital needs are. So I still do all of the genomics work, but I also am more overseeing a broader range of digital solutions that apply to other areas besides that as well. So we do clinical bioinformatics for precision medicine. We do help with clinical research study documentation, research data management in general. When you're talking about this much data at the organization, it has to be managed and sometimes shared in an appropriate way, de-identified and all of that. We work on those issues and help with that. Also, so accordingly, data sharing, governance, policy and process, and cybersecurity are all incredibly important when we're talking about patient data. So the importance of my job and research and why I chose this career is, I kind of like the saying, progress isn't made by early risers, it's made by lazy men or women trying to find easier ways to do something. And I live by that. I like to make efficiencies and help other people with their work. I feel really strongly about research as being the basis for improving healthcare overall. And my contribution is to help people solve their digital problems as we have, the world is much more digital every day. And yeah, I just love to solve problems. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And Ahmed, you are the last one up. Feel free to do a screen share.
Good evening, everyone. Great to see you. Great to meet you all today. My name is Ahmed Al-Awamer. I'm a physician specialized in palliative care. I work at Princess Margaret Hospital. Now, I'm also, I wear different hats as an academic physician. So I'm also the director for medical education at University Health Network. So in my role, I provide care for my patient, and I'm also responsible for educating a lot of future physicians. Now, sorry, my background, I'm originally from Saudi Arabia. I moved to Canada in about 12 years ago. I've been working as a doctor for the past 24 years. The last 10 years of my career were at Princess Margaret. I have 3 children. I love reading, I love travel, and I love also watching TV. Here is so in terms of my education, I finished my medical school in Saudi Arabia 24 years ago. I guess no one will be able to pick me up from or show which one is me in this picture. Now, in addition to that, after finishing my medical school, I also did some specialty training at different stages at the University of Toronto. And in addition to that, I also completed the Master in Bioethics at the University of Toronto. Now, what's the topic that we're going to talk about today? So, as you heard from the other my colleagues who are brilliant scientists interested in developing treatment options for cancer and ways of understanding how cancer behave. My job and my work is mainly focused on the human connection and supporting cancer patients. So my main focus is around supporting a patient with cancer and managing their symptoms and trying to improve their quality of life. I like to think of my job as mainly focused on relieving suffering. And we're not talking only about physical suffering like pain and all the other symptoms. We're also want to make sure that we're supporting cancer patients psychologically, making sure that we're providing them with safe space to talk about their concern and manage any issues that they have. Also talk about any social or spiritual concerns that may affect cancer patients. So we're mainly interested in the holistic care. my job is mainly about empathy, compassion, and the human connection. How can I continue to support my patient who during their cancer journey and make sure that they are thriving well, they are living well. Now, in terms of my area of interest or focus, I'm also particularly interested in supporting adolescent and young adult with cancer. And the reason why I'm focused on this age group, now many of you are probably in this age group, and you could perhaps have a different view of life compared to an older adult. And this is what makes young people unique in terms of their needs. There is a lot of pressure on young people in terms of their ability to achieve their goals, whether continue school or getting a job or continuing their job, finding a partner, building their family. There is a lot of disruption that happens because of the cancer on their ability to live well, on their finances, on sexual health, on fertility, on their ability to exercise. There is also significant impact on self-image. I think many of you are perhaps aware of the importance of self-image. I guess many of you perhaps have accounts in social media which emphasizes the importance of self-image. And with cancer, there is also significant disruption, whether losing weight or losing hair or all the other cancer effects on the body. So there is also the emotional part and coping and the impact of cancer, not only on the young person, but also on their families, whether parents or partner or sometimes children as well. So you can see how unique a young person needs compared to an older adult. And this is why I kind of focus on this area. We want to make sure that we provide young people with a safe space where they can talk about their concerns, their worries, and they can talk about it with someone who can understand and can provide them with the support they need. Now, what's a week in my life? It's busy. It's busy because I wear different hats. So half of my time is spent in the clinic, meeting my patient and trying to follow up on their concerns. Now, things with cancer change all the time. So you have good days, you have bad days. So it's very important to keep regular follow-up and regular contact with our patients. And part of that is also involved being available, so responding to emails, responding to phone calls, making sure that we're available when our patient needs us. Now, in addition to that, there is also the academic part where I'm expected to teach medical learners or medical trainees. So I try to make them aware of the needs of cancer patients and how can we support them optimally. There is also the teaching part for other healthcare other professionals to the public, talking about cancer and palliative care and the support that cancer patients need. And then there is also the other part of my job, which is the admin leadership role, where I'm expected to engage in different meetings with staff, with other leads, respond to emails, and work in different projects. Now, the last part, exercise, is something that I'm trying to do regularly. I hope I will be able to maintain. But I think it's very important to maintain some balance. Now, why I chose this career? I think it's the notion or the understanding that I'm helping people. The ability to be, or the satisfaction of feeling that you were able to help cancer patients from all ages, especially young adults, and you relieve their suffering. You're able to connect with them as a human. You're able to speak with them and relieve their pain. I'm able to help them live well. Despite all the challenges they're experiencing, they can always rely on me being available and providing them with the support and the care using the tools and the resources that my brilliant scientist has come up with. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. All right, so it is now the open Q&A period. I'm going to spotlight all of our panelists. So feel free to put all of your questions in the chat, or if you don't want to put them to everyone, you can message it to me. And if you have a question, you can also raise your hand. But to start things off, we'll ask some of the pre-submitted questions, and hopefully we'll get more chat questions as we go along. So the major pre-submitted question that we got was just why cancer? Why is that your interest? Why was that the field you started off in or that you're still in? And maybe to make things easier, we just go in order of the speakers. So, Forum, tell us why.
For me, it's kind of like split between personal connection. I have lost family members to cancer. And then there's also the aspect of, everyone wants to cure cancer. That's always like everyone's kind of ultimate goal, but really to be able to help find some sort of solution, whether it's a small solution or a big solution to some aspect of cancer is very interesting to me. And from a biologist perspective, it's such a complex disease. And so to be able to really understand the complexity further, to be able to kind of problem solve, that's also very interesting to me.
Therese?
Yeah, I think Forum did a really good job of covering it for me as well. But from a nursing perspective, treating cancer patients across acute care, across ICU, you really, really see the struggle that they go through and their families going through. And a lot of it is so much uncertainty because they don't know if their treatment is working. They don't know if their cancer will be coming back. And for those patients, I felt that it's so important for them to have a healthcare team that is compassionate and who is able to support them well throughout their journey, even if the end of the road is not a cure. That if they do unfortunately pass away from their cancer, that it's important for them to feel hope and to feel that even if they do pass away, that they're potentially making things better for other cancer patients in the future. So that's something that really drew me into this patient population. And from a nursing scientific perspective, cancer is just so interesting as well. And it's a combination of all these very, very critical conditions that coalesce into the cancer condition. And from an ICU nursing perspective, it's just incredibly interesting to care for. So it's a mixture for everything for me, and it's a great, exciting field.
Natalie?
Yeah, I also had a personal connection around the time that I started my university work, and they were actually having treatment at Princess Margaret, and I started doing co-ops in university at Princess Margaret and in the lab, and just kind of got hooked on the complexity, as you say, and the challenge, and then of course wanting to support Princess Margaret. Thanks.
And Ahmed.
I share what everyone said about the cancer. I think to me is the ability to being able to help and present. I'm going to use analogy of why cancer. Think about all the courageous people who are taking risk and go to areas of the world where they're experiencing disaster or wars or any disruption. These people, they're taking the risk in order to support the most needy people. And this is how I feel about it. cancer is one of the needy, like one of the most needy patients in terms of support and help. And I find it very satisfying being able here to support my patients and support cancer patients.
I do see a raised hand. I think, Alex, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, feel free to go ahead.
Hi. First off, thank you all for doing this today. I really enjoyed it. But my question, well, I wanted to go into pediatric oncology, but I wasn't sure which things I'd have to do for school because I'm in grade 10 currently and I have to start doing my courses, and I think we have SHISM. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but there's co-op connected to it, and I didn't know if that was a good idea for me to do or if there's something else I should do instead.
Maybe let's switch the question to more like extracurriculars and things you should think about when you are considering a field in cancer or physician or any of that. So maybe who wants to go first? Natalie, tell us about extracurriculars and things.
So I just wanted to comment that firstly, you should talk to your guidance counselor. They're very helpful and they know a lot about what you should do to set yourself up right. So I just support the guidance counselors and go ahead and make an appointment there. But I also strongly feel that co-op is a great experience. I did co-op in high school. I worked in Sunnybrook, and although not in the field that I ended up in, it was a great first step into thinking about healthcare and how I wanted to contribute to it. And then I did co-op in university, as I said. So I think it's an excellent opportunity. I'll let others speak to other opportunities if they have any. Thanks.
How about Clarice? You had a unique path. Did you do any specific extracurriculars or anything?
A lot of my time was taken up by the Army, so that was my primary extracurricular. But if I could go back, I would love to do some more extracurriculars, volunteering at the hospital, kind of like what Natalie was mentioning, because just having that exposure to the population, to the clinical environment, I think sometimes the idea of what you want to do, when you start actually being in the environment, you start really, really understanding what you need to work on within yourself and what you need to work on professionally. And maybe you'll see something else that you want to do. So I encourage you to reach out to your guidance counselor and to find volunteering opportunities within that field.
Anyone else want to add anything? There's a lot more questions, so we can maybe keep touching on it throughout the rest of the talk. Unless Ahmed, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone. I think it's, if you're thinking about future career in medicine, then of course, first of all, you have to have the passion of being able to connect with patients, because the medicine usually takes a lot of work. And I think most of the physicians that I know, they feel like very great sense of reward with being able to help. So first of all, that's important. Volunteering, of course, is important. It's going to take some time because usually with medicine, you'd have to go through undergrad and then maybe after that, medicine, and then after that you can apply to subspecialty. So try to take it one piece at a time. I think if you start thinking it's good to have a long-term vision, but just try to sit down, because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming when you look at the end. But if you start breaking it down, it becomes easier.
Perfect. I think that was like a nice summary. We'll see if it comes up again. There's a lot of kind of raised hands and chat questions. So I think I'm just going to go back and forth so everyone has a chance. So the first chat question that I see is, how would having cancer change someone's body or even change someone emotionally or mentally? So I guess they want to know more about the experience of like a patient. So maybe who wants to go first? Clarice, do you want to try, or Ahmed? Ahmed, go first.
I can go. So stop me. I can go on and on and on for that. So cancer affect the cancer patient body in different ways, significantly. So there are different symptoms that cancer can cause, whether pain, weakness, tiredness, fatigue. Cancer patient, sometimes they experience significant weight loss, they lose muscles, they lose appetite, they lose their hair. Sometimes also they emotionally they may feel very distressed, worried. Sometimes they may feel sad, down, depressed. A lot of things that come to mind in cancer patient, like thinking about what will happen to me? Why am I dealing with cancer while my colleagues are not feeling the same? Who can help me? So it can be quite confusing and overwhelming emotionally as well. People may have also difficulty sleeping. And I mentioned also, I try to emphasize the self-image because as someone who works with young people, I see how this is difficult for a lot of young adults, especially when they want to continue, in creating the connection and relationship, because this change in image can be very significant. I'll stop here, and my colleague, if they have any other addition.
I think it was a pretty good summary of a lot of different things for the students. So let's go back to a raised hand. I think, Sarah, I saw your hand go up first of the group, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Thank you for organizing this. I have a question. So after hearing everyone's professional paths and their journeys and them trying to make new cancer treatments, I don't get why like I'm not sure why people are pushing radiation and chemotherapy. Like you guys can, like I heard a lot of professional paths, but none of them involved with a new treatment other than just building onto chemotherapy and radiation or other similar fields that include radiation. So why do we keep developing radiation to make it more challenging while we are aware that it has numerous negative effects that, for instance, like it can cause alopecia, hair fall, and etc., etc., and it can also cause fertility, as we all know. So why do we keep pushing radiation and chemotherapy? Is this like our only best option?
Clarice, how about you get this one?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So that's a fantastic question. And I also did see a question come up that are there side effects to immunotherapy. So immunotherapy has been relatively new to the world of cancer treatment comparatively to chemotherapy and radiation. So as you know, there's a lot of side effects with radiation, but these treatments, the chemotherapy and radiation, are already standard treatments that are accessible to patients. And that's the key point, that they're accessible. So for a lot of patients who have cancer, they undergo successive rounds of chemotherapy and radiation that are already proven by studies before that they have been effective potentially for helping them with their cancer. And it's only when those treatments are not working for them, that their cancer continues to grow, that we can look at getting them into a clinical trial that may involve immunotherapy. And the reason for that is the clinical trials only take people who are well enough to undergo these experiments. So there's a lot of very extensive criteria that they have to meet. And this outcome of the trials is, unfortunately, it's not certain. We don't know if it will have a good outcome or not, which is why we're studying it. So it's not an option that's presented to everyone. But I do want to point out that over the years, we've had such good study outcomes with certain immunotherapy medications like nivolumab, for example. So that medication is actually now offered to a lot of patients with some cancers as a standard of care treatment. So that's already given to them before they may even receive regular chemotherapy or radiation, because the evidence for that has been so strong. So we're seeing the world of cancer treatment changing year by year. And I think in a few years, there might be more talk about immunotherapy just in regular clinicians' offices. And that's really exciting. I hope that answers your question.
May I add one thing? So I just wanted to comment on the why radiation and chemotherapy. Just to add to Clarice, I think the world of oncology is very guided by science. So a lot of times the doctors, when they recommend medication, they recommend the best available treatment for their patient based on the available research. And in that, we're looking into the survival, like how long people are expected to survive, and and the impact on quality of life. And I can tell you from my experience, although sometimes the side effects might sound very scary, there are times where I found radiation or chemotherapy tend to be quite effective for some of my patients, where it helped relieve their pain, where it made them feel well, where they were extremely weak, unable to move. And after a few rounds of chemo or radiation, they were feeling better. So you're right, these medications have their own toxicity, but my job as a physician all the time is to try to make sure that we're balancing the benefits and the side effects and making sure that we have more benefits than side effects. And at the end of the day, we present these options to our patient and they decide on which way they want to do. So, so that's usually what happens. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't get the point where you said that chemotherapy is like the best option. Is it because our only option, or is it because it's just like it's safe and we're just going on with the stats and relying on previous research? I mean, can't we just develop something else like that does not revolve around radiation or anything related to that? Because centuries over centuries we've heard that radiation, even with closer radiation, is like really bad for your body, because then that can cause cancer or even worse. And so why are we even relying on that?
Can I say something? I think that you're right, but the point is that we are working on new treatments. That is, it's just that it takes a long time for something to come from the lab. There are many different types of trials that happen even before it gets to humans. You know, they're doing studying in the lab, and that takes years, and then they're doing testing perhaps on some animals or some other model, and that also takes years. And then to get to people, there are several stages that it must pass through in order to become a treatment that is widespread and available to everybody. So we're all working very hard on all those new treatments that will perhaps be better under certain circumstances for some patients. And it just takes time.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Let's see. Not a lot of time left, but let's ask a few more questions. So Forum, I got a question specifically for you. So they were like, cancer research is really cool. How do I get involved? How did you get involved? Like, how would you advise someone that like has this interest and wants to explore it through a research side of things?
Yay, I love research. So I guess the first thing I would say is that in high school, you can get started as early as high school. There are some hospitals at UHN that offer summer programs for high school students. So you can come in, you can work in a lab for a bit. You can work as a high school student, you might be able to get a summer volunteer position with some research labs. What you're already doing by participating in UHN STEM Pathways, there's a lot of different activities through them that you can take, which are also going to expose you to different research ops. From undergrad onwards as well, depending on your school, you'll have research courses you can take. There's research opportunities in the summer again. You can work in a lab. The best way to get these opportunities is your TAs are your friends. There's our grad students. We always check our emails. We have less emails than professors, so it's easier to get to us than it is to get to a professor. And so talk to your TAs in undergrad, tell them that you're interested in research, what opportunities might be available. They might be able to redirect you to someone they know. The other thing is cold emailing still does work. It takes a lot of emails, but eventually you'll hit someone and then they'll be able to respond and you can discuss with them how to get involved. The other thing is always a network as much as you can. So if you have any friends that are in research labs, sometimes they know about other labs that are looking for students, or their lab might be recruiting. And it's kind of helpful to get an idea of like who's looking for what.
I think that was like a good summary of options. So we're running a little bit low on time now. So I guess maybe I'll just like ask one final question to all of you. Maybe I'll kind of combine it. So it's like a two-part. The students want to know, where do you see cancer care going in the future? And then also to tie in, like, what advice do you have for them as they consider going into cancer care? So where do you see it? What advice would you give them to get in on this future pathway? And then maybe go reverse order to spice things up. Ahmed, what do you see for the future?
Well, there is two parts to that. So there is, first of all, cancer treatment itself. And I think more and more we're learning about precision medicine. By precision medicine, we're learning more about the cell biology, the cells, and we're trying to come up with treatment targeted to that. So I think that's where the future is heading in terms of cancer treatment. There is still the human need and the human connection, which I emphasize that this is very important. And I'm hoping that with time, we can also provide more and more support, because this support right now is not available for everyone. We're lucky to have it here at Princess Margaret, but we're hoping with time we will be able to combine both cancer medicines plus humanistic care that able to support our patients. Thank you.
Natalie?
I have to admit, I was reading the chat and responding to some things in the chat, so I'm not entirely sure what the question was, if you don't mind.
The question is, where do you see cancer care going, and what advice would you have them while they pursue cancer care?
Okay, I think that, you know, cancer care over the years that I've been involved has always been sort of at the leading edge of all kinds of research. So many of the techniques that we talked about or that I was speaking of are used in other areas as well, but they've been first used in cancer and most used in cancer. And so I guess from my point of view, like, you know, working in some of the leading like labs and looking into what's the new techniques and technology would be where cancer research is always going to be going.
Clarice, yes, that's next.
Yeah, I think the future of cancer research, it can go in so many, there's a lot of different avenues that people have been studying. So on my team, we're studying immunotherapy and those kind of cell therapy drugs where we take the cells from a specific person and we make an individualized treatment for that person. And that's been very exciting. But I've also heard of teams who are working on vaccines for cancer, and that's also really, really interesting. So it's really hard to say where it will be going, and I think that in itself is what we're trying to get at, that it's such a rapidly growing field. I think we'll see more in terms of looking at the experience of cancer as well. So linking into what Ahmed was saying about how the experience of cancer can be improved for a lot of our patients in our healthcare system. Sorry, was there another part of that question? I may have missed that.
I think you covered everything in your answer.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right, Lauren, end us off.
I feel like everyone covered most of what I would want to say. As a student who's still early on in their career, and specifically in research, I think that there are so many new technologies, new methods that are coming up that are honestly so interesting, so novel, and there's a lot of work on patient partners and making sure patients have a voice in the research that's going on. So I have a very positive outlook for where I think cancer care is going. I think that there's more of a relationship between the physicians and the researchers and the patients, and I think that can only lead to more positive and more innovative research and care.
All right, so thank you to all of you for speaking. That is the end of our Q&A period. And I know there's still questions in the chat. I know there's still to have raised hands. So if you did like this event on cancer, we do have a feedback form, and feel free to fill it out and tell us you want more cancer events, then we can hopefully get to all of your questions. But we do have a couple kind of wrap-up slides which we talk about the next few events that we have. So we're just gonna do that quickly, and then we're gonna end the event because I know we're running 2 minutes long right now. So just again to reiterate, our team is UHN STEM Pathways. So we run both virtual and in-person events through UHN. And so you can check out our website to learn more about the programs and things that we do. Or if you have any questions, feel free to email us at our STEM Pathways at UHN email.